So, he's dead, right? Okay, now he's dead. Okay, what the fuck is this kid made of? Goku? Tokyo Ghoul was made in the year 2014 by a director who didn't have many projects under his belt, so my expectations weren't very high going in. So, was my original notion right? Well... The show opens with crazy technicolor murders spreading throughout Tokyo like anything but Ebola, because I am tired of those jokes. But as soon as things start to get interesting, we jump over to our main character, Kaneki, a normal teenager who we find awkwardly talking to a girl he likes about books for a third of the episode. Seriously, the first third of this episode is just a kid babbling about books to a girl that he likes while a bunch of characters who don't matter now but will later on meander in the background. But I digress because as soon as Kaneki shuts his pretentious mouth, the girl Rise, whatever, tells him that she likes him. And he likes her too! What a nice way to start off! Then she bites his jugular out of his stupid neck. Apparently she's a ghoul, which is something that totally exists in this world and everybody just kind of deals with. Which is stupid as hell because in this world, if somebody of our own species is the wrong shade, they can't even make it through the TSA line. If something like this happened in the real world, I'm willing to bet that not only would the world unite to kill every last one of these things, but there would probably be a sanctioned sport built around it. But I digress once more because not only does this girl rip out his throat like Rick Grimes, she then proceeds to beat his ass up and down Tokyo like a redhead stepchild. I have red hair, so I can say that. After beating the walls with him like his existence was their fault and then stabbing him in the gut for funsies, it looks like our protagonist is dead. But this is an attack on Titan, so instead the walls seek vengeance and dogpile her ass to death. Afterwards he gets rushed to the hospital where some genius decides, medically speaking, this kid's all fucked up. Let's just throw her organs in him. To which I have to assume that a competent nurse finally responded, they aren't even the same species. Do you know if their blood types match? Does she even have human organs? To which the doctor responded, fuck it, cut him up. Once Frankenstein's abortion is finally cleared, he heads home to see a news special about ghouls, which once again, people are just totally cool with existing. He then tries to eat something but throws up just as the most convenient news special ever flashes on screen informing him that ghouls can't eat people food because reasons. He then starts crying like an infant because much like an infant, he really wants a Whopper but can't have one. After waking up the next morning, meandering around the city and realizing just how much humans are starting to resemble Happy Meals, he heads home only to realize that his eye has suddenly been possessed by Gambit. He says fuck this, I like Wolverine better, and tries to stab himself in the gut. But apparently his abs are made of Michael Jai White because instead of killing him, the knife decides to kill itself. He has a conversation with the girl living inside of his head who had tried to kill him, which is totally how organ transplants work, and eventually finds himself roaming the streets again. While there, he smells something edible and rushes towards it like his last name was Limbaugh, only to discover that it's a human corpse and has already been spoken for by another ghoul. Surprisingly, the ghoul actually offers him a bite, but then even more surprisingly gets Chuck Norris before Kaneki can even take him up on the offer. Turns out this particular feeding ground belongs to yet another ghoul by the name of Nishiki. Only it doesn't at all, because after whipping Kaneki's ass for a while, as people are wont to do, a girl shows up and beats Nishiki in a dick measuring contest before playing a go round of bitch tossing with Kaneki. Eventually, Kaneki finds the way into the world of the ghouls and discovers that he's basically the blade of their species, and that's where our story begins. Before I say anything else, I want to say that the animation is very fluid and very well done, but that the tone is very off-putting and weird. It starts off dark and with a really good sense of horror, but then it ditches that by episode 3 and goes to really bright colors for no apparent reason. And while the gory parts are still gory, the subtle change in palette really takes the horror aspect out of it. It's like if you went to the movies to watch American Werewolf in London only to have it change into Willy Wonka after the first act. There were also several times while watching that felt like playing a Phoenix Wright game, especially during the dialogue-heavy scenes. Objection! And from time to time, it kinda felt like I was watching Fully Cooley. But all that aside, the fast-paced action and good character design kept me interested, and I found almost all of the visuals enjoyable. The only thing that really threw me off is when they started to invert the colors in some of the more major fights, which I know had to serve some purpose for some reason, but all I could think is that some video editor somewhere was in Photoshop and hit Control-I for no discernible reason. The audio is kind of a mixed bag for me in the sense that I felt that the voice actors were on point and they did a phenomenal job. The emotion was there when it needed to be, and everybody was really distinct and just above par. The same goes for the effects team, as everything fit very well and never took me out of the moment. The music, on the other hand, just didn't stand out to me. I know people love the battle theme and the opening song, but neither of them really did anything for me or brought anything new to the table. I don't hate either one of them, I nothing them. The characters, however, are a different story. While I will admit that Kaneki is your generic idiot child who gets too much power and has no idea what to do with it, he is still somewhat relatable. He genuinely acts like somebody who's becoming a monster and is terrified of it. It works really well for about 3 episodes, but after that he just stops being relatable and he gets Boy Scout syndrome and he refuses to make any hard decisions or ever do what needs to be done. There are many times in the series where he could do something, make a difference, save a life even, but instead all he does is sit on the sidelines, either due to his fear or his aversion to violence. And for a world wherein murder is the norm, that just comes off as almost naive. Look, I understand not wanting to kill people. One of my favorite anime characters of all time, Bash the Stampede, had that moral. But to have that much potential and do absolutely nothing with it isn't just irresponsible, it kind of makes me hope that he gets killed off so a better character can take his place. But one thing I will give him is one scene in episode 8. I won't go into too much detail, but the situation eventually leads him to standing in a street in this beautiful scene where he has a mask over his face and he's begging to not be made a killer. The scene really resonated with me and I feel like it made a character that I genuinely dislike somewhat relatable, and for one shining moment, real. That being said, I feel like all of the side characters are actually better characters than he is, particularly Toka and Hinami, both of which I feel retain semblances of humanity while still doing what they have to when push comes to shove. Toka, while not exactly the shining embodiment of pacifism, does grow as a person and become better as the show goes on. While Hinami is probably the best example I've ever seen of a realistic child in any supernatural anime ever. She's a kid, and what a novel concept. She acts like a kid. All of her actions and reactions mirror this perfectly, and she never acts older than she is or out of character. There are a ton more characters I can mention here, like Hide, who is Kaneke's best friend, or Yoshimura, who is basically his Yoda. None of them get much development, and if they did, it would probably be a spoiler, so I wouldn't mention it. Although I will say that Mr. Yomo is a complete badass. Like, I know nothing about this guy, but I would totally watch an entire show based around him. On the flip side, we have the villains like Nishiki or Skinny White Uncle Ruckus, or this guy with the hockey mask, who I shit you not is named Jason. And oh look, the French have arrived. Then there's this gelatinous bowl of packed meat that literally says saunter as it weebles and wobbles towards things. Now I know he was meant to be intimidating, but I seriously could not be the only person just laughing his ass off whenever this guy was on the screen. Generally speaking, the villains are all sociopathic, psychotic stereotypes that just enjoy killing for various reasons. And while they are given backstories, I really don't see any of them standing out in a memorable way. That's not to say that they're bad villains, because I do genuinely hate every single one of them. But I just don't see them making any top 10 lists anytime soon, you know? And lastly on this point, we have character design, which is decent. Most of the characters are your general run-of-the-mill anime stereotypes, but they are well defined and I enjoyed the look, except for these two. Now neither of these characters are really important to the storyline, but they were made incredibly memorable for me, partially because this guy's head looks like a beaver's ass, and just fuck this guy's whole entire chin situation. As for the plot, it's a vampire movie. But the main character has to deal with slowly transforming into a monster. It's a vampire movie. But he's a hybrid. It's a vampire movie. But there's this hierarchy. It's a vampire movie! But they're not called vampires. Okay, look. I realize these things are ghouls, whatever the hell that means nowadays, and they have these crazy Dead Man Wonderland powers, but just because the creature changed doesn't mean the format has. We start off with shocking supernatural murders, move on to an everyday guy who gets bitten and eventually becomes a creature that needs to feed off of humans to live, and then we move on to another group of creatures just like him who show him the ropes, and we finally end on the decision between becoming a monster and staying a man. It's a vampire movie! This is a story we've heard time and time again, and if you don't like the vampire comparison, then try American Werewolf in London or Dr. Jekyll or literally any monster movie. Now that doesn't automatically make the show terrible, it's just recycled. I think the main reason behind the hype of this show is that while this format has been done before, it hasn't been done well recently, and they saw the twist on it, and people just latched on because while it might be a tired format, it is an effective one. Or it would be if they showed anything. Seriously, this show seems to censor itself for no reason at all. All of the goriest and most shocking things in this are implied and never shown. And for a horror movie or even a monster movie, that's pretty much the bread and butter. And on a side note, there is one other thing I take issue with. The ghouls themselves. There seems to be no strict rules at all set for them. First off, I have no fucking idea how you're even supposed to kill one of these things, because in some episodes they straight up get eviscerated. And then they show up like 2 episodes later just fine. While in other scenes they get a quick cut and they die instantly. Then there's the fact that Toka takes like one small bite of people food and she's sick for like days. Then she eats presumably an entire pot of people food and within a couple hours she's just in fighting shape out of nowhere. Can we make one fucking decision here, people? And what the fuck happened with Reze? She shows up to fuck with Kaneke's head, disappears forever, and then shows back up seemingly when the plot wants her to. If they really want to make it interesting, she would have been there the whole time, causing him not to question only himself, but also his sanity. But as it is, it just comes off as lazy writing and honestly a missed opportunity. Now I know a second season is coming out soon, and with how the story ended, I will be sticking with it. So hopefully in time it can carve out some new ground, but honestly, with the way it's been going, that would surprise the hell out of me. Now with all that being said, Tokyo Ghoul gets an overall score of 6.3 out of 10. It's a good story, it's entertaining, but when it comes down to it, it's a book that I've already read with a different cover slapped on. And if you like this video, hit that like and subscribe button, check out my other reviews, and comment down below telling me what anime you want me to review next, or how wrong I am about Tokyo Ghoul. Probably gonna be that second one.